I mean, I'm fully supportive of the passport strikes. Anybody that's on strike at the moment, everybody deserves a decent pay, do you know what I mean? But I could potentially be out of pocket by £2,500, or if I'm lucky, who I've booked with may allow me to move it. But in reality, I can't actually move the holiday, because the reason why we're going in June is because it's the latest my wife can travel, because she's pregnant at the moment. So normally we go away in September and it wouldn't be an issue. I would have had quite a long time to wait for my passport to get back, you see. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind. If I don't get it back, I don't get it back. There's not much I can do about it. But it will obviously, it will impact us, and it's only a holiday at the end of the day. Should I have sent it away earlier? Possibly. Do you know what I mean? But you only remember to check your passport when you actually look at booking a holiday, don't you?
Stuart Finch from Preston. Lisa Minogue is the travel editor of The Sun. Lisa, what can Stuart do?
Afternoon. Well, I mean, I think he will probably be okay. The government at the moment is saying that they don't anticipate that there's going to be any increase in the 10 weeks they are saying, and have been saying for some time now, that you should expect it to take for your passport to be renewed. Now, actually, the beginning part of this year, it had really improved from the sort of quite disastrous problems we had last year. And it was taking around 2.5 weeks for a simple passport application, about 29 days for a slightly more complicated passport application. And I can't imagine that those numbers are going to jump up hugely. So, I mean, he's put it in on the 27th of March. He's obviously got, a fair number of months now until he's actually travelling in June. He should be absolutely fine. But obviously, I would say to anybody who's thinking about booking a holiday, make sure you check your passport first, especially if you're going to be looking to go away in the short term rather than later in the year.
Do you think this strike is going to affect that ability for you to get it in 4 hours? When you pay a load of money and you turn up on the doorstep of the passport office in Liverpool or Peterborough, Newport, or wherever, around the country.
I definitely think that's where we could see the impact coming in to play here, because this is 5 weeks this strike is going on for. In that time, at this time of year, generally about 1 million passports would have been processed. So, I mean, I think if they're going to try to maintain that sort of level of service for people who've just done the normal passport applications, the number of people who are involved in doing the sort of fast track ones is obviously going to be impacted. And we did see last year as well that there really was a problem in trying to get one of those appointments for the last minute passports. So those are the people I think that could really be impacted by this if you need a passport very much at the last minute.
Lisa Minogue from the travel editor from The Sun, thank you. And the Home Office confirmed a rise in applications but said the amount was close to levels estimated. It said there were currently no plans to change its 10-week guidance for passports to be processed and sent out. Now, it's not long to go until King Charles's coronation, Saturday the 6th of May, full coverage on BBC Radio and Television. But how will you commemorate the event? You can already get your hands on all manner of merchandise, from biscuit tins to gin, and even special seeds to celebrate. They're for your garden. So retailers will be hoping for a boost, but what do people spend their money on when there's a coronation? One of the biggest purchases for the Queen's coronation in 1953 was the modern technology of television.
And now, here comes Her Majesty.
Many families, it seems, are buying new television receivers, radios and radiograms this Christmas. This was the progress report from one television and radio shop.
The sale of television sets this Christmas has been well up to expectations. One interesting point we have found has been the sale of radio gramophones and record players have been well above those sold last year.
The Duke of Norfolk follows Her Majesty into the annex. She will wait there a while, but we will go on ahead of Her Majesty into the Abbey.
Amazing voices. Well, Michelle Dodds is the owner of the luxury homeware and gift site Bean and Bemble. Harriet Hastings is the founder of a luxury biscuit maker, Biscuiteers, and Kian Tan is a retail expert from the accountants PwC, and they all join me now. Welcome to you and yours. So, hello. Michelle, what are you selling?
Hello, I have a selection of homeware. So I've got some textiles that are kitchenware. We've got some tea towels. I've got some aprons. I have some melamine chopping boards that are made out of eucalyptus wood. Everything is sustainably sourced in the UK. It's all handmade by quite small family businesses throughout the UK as well. I'm really passionate about that.
And what have they got on them that makes them different from what you would buy normally? I mean, are you chopping your bread or your apples on the face of the king?
No, thankfully. One of the chopping boards is the shape of the crown, St Edward's crown. I actually had a really comic lady send me an email saying that she didn't really feel like chopping liver on the crown, and I said that maybe
come with a free diamond.
Yeah, maybe she'd be better using fruit and veg. But I do like a little mini chopping board that are really popular. People have them, and they're bars. They have like chopping a lemon. So yeah, they're double-sided as well.
You made products for the Jubilee, didn't you? What was demand like then compared with now?
Yeah, well, I was a really new business, because I've only launched just under 2 years ago. So I decided to do some products for the Jubilee because my mum was born in 1950. Well, my mum and my dad were born in 1952. My mum's always been a real fan of the Queen, and she said, "Oh, you must do something for the Jubilee, Michelle." So I thought, right, okay. So I illustrate everything. I sort of couldn't really order a lot at the time because I was so new, didn't have a huge budget for stock. I ordered, I think, about 100 tea towels, thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to be stuck with these forever. And I think as sort of interest grew, it was only really the 4 weeks leading up to the event, and people must have shared them on social media. I was doing a little bit to try and promote them. At the point, I probably only had about 1,000 followers on Instagram. I didn't know a lot of people who could promote it for me, and I sold them all, and then a few weeks later I had to order 300, and I was, oh my god, I was so stressed, because like I'm obviously it was the most I'd ordered of any particular item.
Well, Michelle, stay with us, because Harriet Hastings is here, and she is the founder of a business called Biscuiteers. I can guess what you sell, Harriet. What does a coronation biscuit taste like?
Well, our coronation biscuits are lemon flavoured, but I suppose the key point is they're all designed around...
Are you calling the king a lemon?
No, we put in all of the kind of symbols of the coronation we've designed. So we've got an orb and a sceptre, a Westminster Abbey, a crown, and the royal ermine. It's all there in a tin of sort of beautifully iced biscuits.
Now the thing is,
tin.
Michelle sells something that is permanent, but of course a biscuit isn't. It's crumbs within seconds. So, I mean, why would people want to buy a coronation biscuit?
I think because partly what people will be doing around the coronation is celebrating and having events and parties. And biscuits are obviously a highly traditional way to celebrate in Britain. But also the tin is a hand-illustrated tin, so it makes a lovely sort of collector's item afterwards.
What's your favourite biscuit?
I really like this time. I think the royal ermine is pretty cool, actually.
It's not made of stoat, is it? What's in a royal ermine biscuit?
Well, it's the design. So what we're doing is we're hand icing. We're hand icing at the moment about 50,000 coronation biscuits.
Cool.
And getting ready for the event. So we've always done these. We're very much a British brand. We're based in London, and we've actually been doing royal biscuits right back since we did Kate and William's wedding. And we did the Platinum Jubilee in collaboration with Buckingham Palace as well. So we know that our customers really love these. So they've been bestsellers since we put them online beginning of February.
Well, let me bring in Kian Tan from PwC. Kian, why do people spend money on royal-related products, including biscuits, which sound delicious, by the way?
Well, it is truly a once-in-a-lifetime event. There hasn't been a coronation for a long time. I think the best comparison, in fact, not even the Platinum Jubilee, which was a little bit overshadowed by the end of the pandemic and the start of the cost of living crisis. You go back to the royal wedding of William and Kate back in April 2011. We had an extra day off, just as we're having today, and we think that boosted the economy by £100 million of spending. It's the parties that Harriet talked about, the street parties. So food and drink definitely benefits from those extra 4 bank holiday Mondays out of the next 8, I think I've counted. So an opportunity to have a party and a reason to go and buy something special as a treat.
And is there a longevity? I mean, biscuits, as I say, are eaten, but the tin is still there. Is there longevity? I've got a coin that I think we got as kids when Charles and Diana were married, and it's big. and silver. If I can feel it in my hand, even though my hands were quite little at the time, but it's something I've had forever afterwards. Is that sort of permanence part of things?
Definitely. So you have a combination of the food and drink and the events and the things that you want to celebrate in the here and now. But as I said, it is truly a once-in-a-lifetime event. We've not seen anything like this. You know, the only person I know who saw the Queen's coronation was my granny, who was there in Westminster Abbey on the day. You know, what do you have to show for something that's quite as momentous for the country? And it does bring the country together after, you know, a tough few years, a cost of living crisis over Christmas. But as inflation starts to ease and as people feel a little bit better and as summer comes around the corner, you know, having something to remember this by is as important as the celebration itself.
Well, Michelle, very quickly, is this a very important time for your business, or is it just business as usual with different things on the tea towels?
No, it's definitely really important. To be honest, it's been a huge catalyst for my business. I've been featured in a few magazines and obviously had this. Previously, I've only done relatively small, quite local events, so this I'm planning to be more national, and I think this is fantastic. So I'm hoping that people see the quality of my products and then they'll come back to me in future and realise that things are really lovely and that I have many more designs, not just the coronation ones.
Michelle Dodds from Bean and Bemble and Harriet Hastings from Biscuiteers and Kian Tan from PwC. Thank you, all of you. Now, Star Trek predicted it the decade before, but 50 years ago today, on the 3rd of April 1973, the first mobile phone call was made in New York by Martin Cooper, who's an executive at Motorola. Now, the phone was almost the size of a shoebox, and it could be used for up to 35 minutes, and after that it needed 10 hours to recharge. 50 years on, mobile phones have transformed our lives, and it's hard to live and work without one now. But a funny thing is happening. There's a revival of retro phones with limited functions, especially the old flip phones, Star Trek, you see, that you have to close and shut them down. Young people have been talking about using them to cut the time they spend online and improve their mental health.
I'm switching to a flip phone for 30 days and documenting the change it has on my day-to-day life.
Why my friends and I only take our flip phones out, we don't take our regular phones out, because we realize that every single problem that we have on a night out, everything that leads to us crying, everything that leads to us having a bad time, stems from our phone while we're out.
So I recently looked it up, and I pick up my phone about 160 times a day. That's once every 6 minutes. And it would be no surprise if my phone was a big reason I struggle to focus or experience a lot of unexplained shifts in my mood.
One of our friends doesn't get on her phone at all when she's out, and she has a wonderful time every single time. It's just so much better of an experience.
I couldn't use Google Maps to navigate to new places. I couldn't check my email on the go. By the end of week 1, using a flip phone felt really not practical, and I was clearly going through like some kind of withdrawal. Week 3 was when all the downsides of using a flip phone started to get massively outweighed by like this creeping peace of mind. It took 30 days without an iPhone to see the extent to which our phones and social media impacts our lives.
And so the dream is we're all getting flip phones.
So that was Osama and Sammy K, and those videos about flip phones had more than 17 million views between them, and the hashtag flip phone has been viewed 666 million times. Sophie Head is 21, she's a student, and she uses both a flip phone and a smartphone.
My initial motivation for buying a flip phone was because I was going away for the weekend and I knew that I wouldn't have a charger and I didn't have a power bank that would last long enough, so it'd mean that I'd still be able to contact people because the batteries are a lot better on these older phones. But then I ended up breaking my regular phone and lasted with the flip phone for about a month. If I'd not had the flip phone, I might have gone out the next day and just bought another smartphone. I think before I used the flip phone there was a lot of things that I was worried about, and then when I actually did it I cared less and less about these things. I was worried about not being able to snap enough pictures because I didn't have as good a camera on the flip phone. I've been a lot more mindful about the pictures that I have taken because I've had to take such a huge camera to do it with. I think the trade-off's definitely worth it. For me, I'm not endlessly scrolling on social media when I should be working. It's definitely removed the doom scroll that I used to have when I was supposed to be in the library doing my work. I don't get the sort of sense that I should be on social media. I'd also say the lack of screen time, reducing it by several hours a day by not being on a phone all the time has improved my sleep a little bit. I think for future, I would like to keep the flip phone. I have it still. I do now also have a new touchscreen phone, but I would like to, this summer when I finish my degree, to just take some time off social media. I think the flip phone will be the best way to do that.
Sophie Head, who's 21. Well, Ben Wood has spent 30 years in the mobile phone industry, and he founded the Mobile Phone Museum. Ben, I remember as a young reporter in the 1980s the sheer joy of the BBC Radio Merseyside station mobile phone. It was a normal telephone handset, and it was attached to a battery which was the size of a loaf of bread, and it weighed a ton, and it had a massive aerial out the back, and I can remember feeling desperately important if I went out on a story with it. It was so flash. Now that we've got smartphones, do you think this flip phone thing is just a gimmick?
Well, I think it was interesting listening to Sophie and the way she used it. She said that she, broke her phone, she had the flip, she lasted for about a month. I think finding balance in our lives is what's key, and this idea of a bit of a digital detox is important, but the smartphone is such a part of the fabric of people's lives. It's your camera, as she said, it's a credit card, TV, alarm clock, your maps, the way you keep in touch, your email. So it's actually quite hard to live without a smartphone, but we are seeing some interest in more basic phones for certain use cases. As Sophie said, you can go out at the weekend or something, or go to a festival and not run out of battery, but still be connected.
But it's sort of like food, isn't it? It's essential for life, and if you think you've got too much of it, you need to eat less or do less. It's a behavioural thing, not a technology thing.
Definitely, and I was really interested in those other clips that you had from the American users, and it's interesting, the flip phone is a very big thing in North America. I think it's more the return of the kind of the feature phone, the old-fashioned kind of Nokia phone. Studies though have shown, I was talking with a psychologist earlier today, and she was saying that studies show it takes about 3 weeks to change behaviours, and therefore you're not going to be able to put down your smartphone and in a week find that you can't live without it. But my contention is this is kind of a bit of a hot story at the moment. There are some people doing it, but the smartphone is a very important device. You just need to be responsible in the way you use it. So don't have it at the dinner table, don't use it in the cinema, but for other parts of your life it's still going to remain important.
Don't use it when you're driving along or anything like that.
Well, absolutely,
Is there a whiff of people going back to record players and cassette players? Is there a bit of being a bit cool about this?
Absolutely, and I checked in this morning just ahead of this show with one of the companies that's one of the biggest companies selling these types of phones, and they certainly are seeing a number of things. They're seeing the digital detox idea, maybe just you might have a bit of time out. They're seeing the emergency phone, but also a little bit of retro kind of love, and there's a lot of nostalgia. And with the 50th anniversary of the mobile phone call today, in my role as the founder of the Mobile Phone Museum, I've been on the radio all day, channels right across the piece and on BBC TV and everything, talking about it, because there's such a nostalgia and love of mobile phones, and everybody has one. It means something to everyone. You can remember your first phone. You can go to mobilephonemuseum.com and probably find some of the phones you've had over the years.
And it was all predicted on Star Trek. Ben Wood, thank you so much for joining us. Now that's it. The £67 that we got a month off our energy bills has stopped. Support for most businesses is also being scaled back, and it might feel like bad news for now, but even though the price of crude oil has just made a big jump over the last couple of days, we may be starting to turn a corner. The price of energy on the wholesale markets has tumbled. One supplier, OVO, is offering its customers a fixed rate tariff. Remember them? This tariff is set at a lower, cheaper rate than the current prices. We've heard from a lot of listeners recently about how energy costs are affecting them, and we went back to 3 of them.
I'm William from the West Midlands. I'm a father of 4 children and currently studying as an apprentice electrician. I find my energy bills thoroughly depressing, and I do as much as I can to try and avoid even looking at them, really. It's a great cause of stress in my life. Realistically, £300 to me, with a family of 4 children, is like a week's food. You don't want to sound ungrateful. It's a lot of money to give to everybody who's on universal credit. I feel like there's bigger things they could do than just chucking a bit of cash at everybody.
My name's Yvonne Austin, and I live in Fife in Scotland, and I run a very small yoga studio where I teach yoga classes and one-to-one yoga therapy. It was quite a shock to have a look at the bills and see that actually my income is lower than I'm paying out for energy for the last 3 months. Of course, that'll change as we go into the warmer months, and I'm not paying as much for electric and gas. But I just don't really think that it's going to be viable to continue the business at all, to continue running classes, which is really unfortunate.
My name is Paul Smith. I'm Managing Director of Withington Baths, which is a leisure centre in South Manchester. Our bills are increasing. For the year, gas and electric was about £75,000 last year. That goes up then to 180 going forward, so clearly £100,000 that we've got to find from somewhere. Like all leisure centres, we were disappointed that swimming pools, leisure centres, were not recognised as an energy-intensive sector. What the government has done, which is certainly good, is they have allocated 64 million to support leisure centres. I've not seen the detail on that. Overall, we are concerned because there's £100,000 that we could be spending a lot of really good stuff, and instead it's all going on to utilities.
So, with all that in mind, is now a good time to try to fix your energy price if you can? Joe Malinowski is from the Energy Shop. Welcome to you and yours. You run a price comparison site. What are you seeing?
Well, it's a really difficult question to answer at the present moment in time. You sort of said that the tide may be turning for energy bills. I would say, actually, if you look on a forward-looking basis as a consumer, I know most people look backwards, compare today's bill against the fact that it was cheap at half the price 2 years ago, and can quite easily be spooked into thinking it's going to keep going up. But on a forward-looking basis, as you pointed out, the wholesale price has tumbled, and even retail energy bills have peaked, and they peaked about last October, and they are very much on a downward trend. They're not coming down anywhere near as fast as they should be, in our opinion, but they are coming down, and that leaves a real dilemma for consumers, because you are in a situation now where we used to have two prices: a regulated price, which was the price cap for people who would switch to ensure they weren't, ripped off by the energy suppliers, and a competitive market, which was extraordinarily cheap. Now we have two regulated prices: the price cap, and if that is too high, a price guarantee below that, which is a cap within a cap. But we have no competitive market. If we had a competitive market, energy bills would already be below £2,000. Even after today's move in oil prices, they would already be below £2,000. But because of lags in the system, and I would say, unnecessary lags in the system, the energy price cap is falling, and it will continue to fall. And we'll get this sort of crossover point coming in a few months down the line, where we expect that the price cap will drop to £2,000. So we got this OVO tariff coming into the marketplace.
But that's only for existing customers, though, isn't it?
It's only for existing customers, and that's another reason why we're not seeing competition coming in, because we have a regulator who has gone from their fundamental duty, which is to protect energy consumers, has seen an industry implode, largely watching and doing nothing about it.
Well, they would say that's not true at all. There's government help of £67 a month. Okay, that's just come to an end, and that the industry said we've got huge wholesale prices to start with. They had to hedge ahead to try and protect further increases from that. They would disagree with what you just said.
They might disagree with what I said, but actually what they've actually very firmly done is they've gone from clearly enabling competition, excessively enabling competition, by not checking who was actually coming into the marketplace. And that's not just coming from us. That came from the House of Commons Select Committee, who criticised them for being really asleep at the wheel while they were doing this. To a situation where, having watched half the industry implode without making any intervention to sort of prop up some of the more sound companies within that, have now switched to put in place measures in the marketplace that is actually ensuring that the remaining companies don't go bust. And we've had measures. So, for example, you've got a ban on acquisition-only tariffs. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's asymmetric. So it means that existing customers can get cheaper deals than new ones. Sounds good, but at the same time, what they've also done is put this market stabilisation charge.
I'm going to stop you there, Joe, because we've run out of time for the programme. Thank you so much, Joe Malinowski from the Energy Shop comparison site. Thank you. That's it for today. It's our phone in tomorrow. Call you and yours, and we're asking, how is the cost of living crisis affecting you? New research suggests 3 in 4 people in the UK are worse off financially than a year ago. More people are struggling to pay off their loans, and a third are now having to borrow because of the cost of living crisis. And we want to know, how have you been coping with price rises? What have you had to do to have enough to live on and afford your bills? You can email us now, you and yours, at bbc.co.uk, and put your phone number on the bottom so we can call you back. Join us just after the midday news tomorrow.
Will do. Thanks, shall we? You and Yours was produced by Tom Mosley. The studio managers were Sue Stonestreet and Amy Brennan. We'll have the latest on the teachers' dispute in the world of wine shortly. Now, though, Elizabeth Rosini is here to update us on the weather.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Chris. You've probably noticed that it's just a very pretty day of weather outside wherever you are across most of the UK. There was a frost to start off this morning for many. Temperatures dipped as low as -5 degrees Celsius in Topcliffe in Yorkshire. But there's a lot of spring sunshine out there. It started this morning. It will carry on this afternoon. A bit more strength to it at this time of year, so it will feel pleasantly warm outside in the best of all of that sunshine. A few things to point out. It is cloudy across Northern Ireland, but still some breaks at times, and that cloud across South Devon and Cornwall is clearing too this afternoon. There will be some high cloud developing across Scotland, and that will turn the sunshine hazy, and some patchy clouds here just bubbling up for central southern England, but lots of sunshine. Bit of an onshore breeze for North Sea facing coast, so a little cooler here, but temperatures will generally peak between 10 and 14 degrees Celsius, maybe 15 in the Moray Firth. Now, overnight tonight, it is set to turn cloudier from the north and the west. There's an approaching weather front, so some cloud across Northern Ireland, Western Wales, and for the north coast of Devon and Cornwall. Elsewhere, lots of clear skies, especially for England and eastern Wales, where temperatures will dip very close, if not below freezing again, so another frost into Tuesday morning for many. Now, on Tuesday, England and Wales will see the lion's share of the sunshine, but western Scotland and Northern Ireland are breezier and cloudier. Quite blustery, actually, tomorrow across the Western Isles. And our weather front will gradually push further and southwards and eastwards throughout the day, sending a bit more cloud into northwest England and eastern Scotland. Perhaps some outbreaks of rain here by the end of the day, with top temperatures of 11 to 14 degrees Celsius. And then on Tuesday night, our front moves into northern England and eastern Scotland, giving further outbreaks of rain here. It's a milder night with possibly still a frost in southeast England.
Elizabeth, many thanks. Now news of the return of a series that's simply a must-listen.
Life-changing. Interviews with extraordinary people whose lives are transformed in unbelievable ways. In the new series, I meet the man who discovers a vast Ghanaian family he never knew existed.
The woman that he'd married was not my mum.
And the mum who came home with her kids and faced a sudden explosion.
It blew me backwards onto the floor. There was rubble all around me.
The new series of Life-Changing with me, Dr. Sian Williams, on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds, starts this Wednesday morning at 9.
The story of a child, a chimney, and the discovery of a lifetime at 1:45. And that's here on BBC Radio 4.
Hello and welcome to the World at One with me, Sarah Montague. Schools in England brace for more strikes.
The number of our members that rejected the government's pay offer is 191,319. And I do have to tell you that that is an outstanding 98% of members that have rejected the vote.
We'll hear from a teacher and head teacher.
I've been there for 7 years, and it's pretty much no one that started with me that still works there. And a lot of these people left the teaching profession altogether.
And ask how to make the job more attractive. Also on the programme, an anti-war campaigner is arrested over the death of a nationalist blogger in Russia. We'll have the latest. And ahead of the coronation, we visit the Prince's Trust.
It's important that people come together in a world where we're connected by mobile phones and internet. We've all been alienated from each other, so coming together is nice.
We hear why those who came of age in COVID times need the charity. The BBC News is read by Charles Carroll.
Teachers in England are set to strike on the 27th of April and the 2nd of May after members of the UK's biggest education union voted to reject the government's pay deal. Ministers said the action was extremely disappointing and that they had no plans to make an improved offer. Our education editor, Branwen Jeffries, heard the results of the National Education Union's annual conference in Harrogate.
At the union conference, the rejection of the pay offer was met with whoops of support from members. The strength of feeling here is obvious, with teachers describing the offer as insulting and unfunded. In addition to the 5% increase for most teachers this year, an additional one-off payment of £1,000 had been offered. The government says that will now be lost. Ministers say the offer for next year is fair. That's a 4.3% increase for most teachers, in addition to starting salaries rising to £30,000, as promised in the 2019 Conservative manifesto. With no agreement, 2 strikes will now go ahead in the summer, although the union says it will ensure at local level that pupils sitting GCSEs or A-levels will not be affected.
The Home Office says there's been a temporary increase in demand for new passports on the first day of a 5-week strike by more than 1,000 passport office workers. Members of the PCS union have walked out in a dispute over pay, pensions and jobs across the UK. The union has warned there'll be delays for both applications and the delivery of passports. The government has not changed its guidance that it takes up to 10 weeks to get the document. In the past hour, the Secretary-General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, has confirmed that Finland will be formally welcomed into the alliance tomorrow. The country, whose membership was ratified last week, decided to join NATO last year after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Sweden has also begun the process, but Turkey is holding off on supporting their application. At a news conference in Brussels, Mr. Stoltenberg said Finland's membership would bring many benefits.
This is a historic week. Tomorrow we will welcome Finland as the 31st member of NATO, making Finland safer and our alliance stronger.
A woman has been arrested in connection with the killing of a prominent Russian military blogger, Vladlen Tatarsky, in St. Petersburg. Mr. Tatarsky died in a bomb blast yesterday at a cafe where he had been giving a talk. Will Vernon reports from Moscow.
Russian investigators said 26-year-old Daria Trepova had been detained on suspicion of involvement in yesterday's explosion at the St. Petersburg cafe. The blast killed Vladlen Tatarsky, a prominent pro-Kremlin military blogger, and wounded dozens of others. The explosive device was reportedly hidden inside a statuette which was passed to Mr. Tatarsky shortly before the blast. It is not yet clear who was behind the bombing, but Russia's anti-terrorism committee released a statement saying it was planned by Ukrainian intelligence agencies and involved people linked to the Russian opposition leader and Putin critic Alexei Navalny. Kiev denies any involvement.
Shares in companies including BP and Shell have spiked by more than 4% this morning after a group of some of the world's biggest oil-producing countries announced a surprise cut in production. Global oil prices surged as much as 8% after OPEC+, which includes Saudi Arabia and Russia, said that it would reduce output by more than 1 million barrels a day. Rishi Sunak has been meeting members of a new police-led national task force which has been set up to tackle grooming gangs who abuse children. Opposition parties say the government should have taken action years ago. Our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford reports.
The task force will be based at the National Crime Agency and will be staffed by specialists with experience of tackling grooming gangs who can then advise local police forces on how best to